Hello, I'm Anna Milbourne. I've been writing and editing books for Usborne Publishing for about 23 years now. Last time I counted, I'd written 150 books, be a few more than that now. Among the titles that I've written are the Peep Insides, this is a new one, and Peep Inside fairy tale books, and more recently the Little Lift and Look series. And I've written some longer storybooks and picture books too. I wanted to introduce to you today two new books that I've written. This one's called I'm Almost Always Kind, and the other one is called I'm Not Very Afraid of Being Alone. They're picture books aimed at 3 to 6 year olds, although I think older children can enjoy them too, and their parents. And I'll talk about this one first. They're beautifully illustrated. They have two different illustrators. This one's illustrated by Åsa Gilland, who is a Swedish lady who lives in Indonesia. And the illustrations are just gorgeous, just to die for. They're even the end papers, you know, I would have a dress made out of that. And they have these beautiful characters in them. The story is about a little boy who is a great-hearted, energetic boy, full of energy and ideas, and he it's a sort of journey that he goes through of realization of how what it means to be kind, and some difficulties he has when he tries to be kind to people and he gets it a bit wrong. And the other book is illustrated by Sandra de la Prada, who's a Spanish illustrator. She lives in Barcelona, and this one's equally sort of edible inside. Very lovely family characters, a little girl and her dad. I love this picture particularly. She's grabbing onto him. It's about a little girl who has separation anxiety. She struggles to be left in a room on her own when she's in a house. She and her dad are in a house without her brothers and sisters and her mum. And it's a way of how she kind of goes through a way of thinking about it and comes to some sort of reassuring conclusion at the end. So they're great sort of topic books. They're story books about different children, but they might encourage a conversation about how your children relate to these topics. So maybe their experience isn't the same, maybe it is, but they kind of bring up nice discussions, I think. What makes them extra special is that they have holes in the pages. So as well as these beautiful illustrations, they have laser cut holes, which, as well as being very, very pretty to look at and enriching the reading experience, this lovely heart there, they help to tell the story. We've used them throughout the story to help the reader understand the meaning of things and to sort of help the story along, help focus on various things. So in this page, the little boy's mum is trying to get him to understand what he thinks is kind sometimes isn't what somebody else thinks is a nice thing to do. And in order to understand what somebody else might like him to do, he has to put himself in their shoes. And so he tries it and he takes the shoes, and obviously that goes a bit wrong, and she has to come back and explain again. Children are quite literal creatures in my experience. So and on the journey through, the holes get more and more plentiful until in the end they sort of, I don't know if you can see that, they sort of describe kindness spreading, like a bit like confetti, kindness spreads everywhere. So if you're kind to one person, they feel like being kind to somebody else, and then the kindness spreads. And the Alone book has holes in it too, beautiful end paper holes. And in this one we used a doorway holes to help explore this feeling that the little girl has of, first of all, she's with her dad and she's happily colouring, and he goes off into the next room, and then all of a sudden she's alone. And I think the doorway hole helps you have that feeling of, you know, there might be somebody through that doorway, but where's he gone? Is he still there? You know, and that sort of helps explore these feelings. And in the end, there's lots and lots of little holes like confetti as well that connect them. She's sort of connected to him. He sings to her and she sings back, and she ends up with this feeling of a thread that connects them. which turns into the metaphor at the end of the book, which is sort of reassuring metaphor that you're connected to your parents through love, and there's an invisible string that connects you wherever you are. So the wholes are sort of trying to do quite an important job in these books, as well as being pretty gorgeous, I think. When writing these two books, I very much drew on my experience as a parent. I have two sons, aged 9 and 11 now, and the boy in I'm Almost Always Kind is very much based on my elder son, who's got a great big heart, but is so full of energy and ideas, and sometimes used to get things a little bit wrong in terms of being kind to people because he was so full of sort of zest. And I found that when you teach very small children about kindness, you teach about taking turns and being gentle and sharing and things like that. When they get a little bit older, you start trying to teach empathy a bit more. You say things like, how would you feel if you didn't have anybody to play with in the playground, if you were on your own? Do you think maybe you'd like somebody to go and ask you to play, so maybe you should behave? That's the point at which I came across problems teaching my elder son, because my two children are chalk and cheese. What my oldest son would consider a great kindness and great fun, such as being squirted with a water pistol, he would think that was amazing and the start of an amazing fun game. My younger child would see that as an attack, and so in his attempts to be kind and fun and have great ideas, sometimes he came a cropper, and I had to teach him that it's not always the case that you have to do unto others as you'd have them do to you, because you have to consider their point of view and what they find nice. The little boy in I'm Always Kind jumps on his sister's sandcastle, but he's trying to play giants, and that's a typical sort of misunderstanding thing that my child might have done. The Alone book, I think every parent has the experience of their child not wanting to be left alone, the kind of can I not even go to the bathroom by myself feeling that a lot of people have. I thought that separation anxiety is something that's talked about with babies from age 1 to 3 commonly, but I know a lot of parents talk about older children, and certainly my children were worried about being in rooms on their own, or being left alone. My younger son had a worry that if he suddenly lost me, he'd be left alone in the world, to cope by himself. And so that book is perhaps based a little bit more on him and on this feeling that he had. I remember one time my elder son, even when he went upstairs, I sent him upstairs to get a pair of socks when he was about 4, I think about 4 or 5. And he spent a really long time getting the socks, and when he came back downstairs, he was without them and looked a little bit sort of like he'd been on a really big journey. And I said, what happened to the socks? And he said, oh, I forgot them when I was there. I didn't manage, because first of all, I had to climb the mountain of impossibility, and then I had to find the cloak that would make me invisible to sneak past the monster behind the door, and then I had to find a sword. And I thought, gosh, this was actually a really big ordeal. It was a big deal for you to go off in the house on your own upstairs and to come back again. And it's something that needs to be taken seriously. Clearly my son had a big imagination, but I think all of those feelings were to do with the fact that this is a real quest for him. So these books were written to sort of based on my experiences and thinking around the problem and trying to work out how to perhaps provide a way of thinking of these things that might be reassuring for a young child.